How do the new rules of the internet change and reshape how, for example, the healthcare industry works, or how we learn and how education works, or how people get access to credit and how the financial systems services industry works. And so I wanted to sort of focus my energy on those, which tend to be very kind of like big, hairy areas that traditionally internet people don't spend time in. But I thought the rules had changed enough where it was possible. And at the same time, we as a society kind of need to fix those areas if we're going to thrive. When I left Facebook, the biggest thing that I realized was, and this is part of the work that I did there, my team built Facebook platform. Then I sort of also built a lot of the sort of mobile products for my team did. And my biggest realization was, wow, we built a lot of this really interesting plumbing for the internet, right? This next phase of highly decentralized, largely social products. But what was lacking was a lot of the really great sort of things to sit on top of that infrastructure. And what I was really interested in was pushing the boundaries beyond what was traditional. So, most people, when they think about social stuff, were thinking about games and other very obvious categories.
Right.
And I was asking the question, well, how do the new rules of the internet change and reshape how, for example, the healthcare industry works, or how we learn and how education works, or how people get access to credit and how the financial systems services industry works.
Right.
And so I wanted to sort of focus my energy on those, which tend to be very kind of like big, hairy areas that traditionally internet people don't spend time in.
Right.
But I thought the rules had changed enough where it was possible. And at the same time, we as a society kind of need to fix those areas if we're going to thrive. Yeah, I would actually say that I don't like investing.
Okay.
I actually like company building. I really like the phase from an inception of an idea to that second or third major iteration of a product. That's where I feel the most comfortable, from like 0 to like a few hundred employees. I love the challenge of being this David against some Goliath. I like being an underdog. I like kind of just working all hours on something, being elbow to elbow with people that just, have nothing going for them other than just like a lot of chutzpah.
Right.
And that's just a really, really cool, pretty badass kind of environment for me.
Right.
I don't really like being some corpo execu type or some, like the problem is, I think the industry in general, and I think this is the world, we all look at false idols a lot, and we kind of pick people and put them on a pedestal and we want to emulate them. And invariably what happens is it's the person who shouts the loudest that gets the attention. And I think that's just, that ends up never working. You don't get a lot of credit for being in the bowels of building companies at that phase. But in my opinion, that's where the most value is created. And for me, it's the most fun. So that's why I do it. I actually am not that interested in a bunch of social good, to be honest with you. I'm interested in change. I'm basically convinced that people right now who are in positions of power are there for completely the wrong reasons and shouldn't be.
Okay.
And so the question is, well, how do you change the dynamics and the cycle of power and the balance of power? And in my opinion, when you empower individual people to make decisions, they tend to make more coherent decisions and they tend to make better decisions. And so when you look at a lot of sort of the problems that are ailing the United States or ailing the world, these are problems that bureaucracies have created. So, why is it that we all talk about how education is the most important thing in the world? And every politician to get elected has to have a position on education. But there's more than $1 trillion of student debt. It's the most encumbered sort of thing that an individual has to deal with. At the tail end of spending all of this money now, there's no guarantee of a job or any really meaningful employment. And then the worst thing is, if you actually go bankrupt, that's the one thing that won't get expunged. And so you can see how like the system is sort of tilted against you. It's really great rhetoric, right? But all of these people have no incentive to actually change the system. And so from my perspective, I'm more interested in sort of creating a dynamic where actually people are empowered and can live kind of like, lives where they are self-sufficient economically. They can do whatever they want. They can buy the things they need. They can have a great life. And if you look to these people who, again, we've put as false idols, they're just going to let you down. And they've let us down. And so I feel like technology and smart, people can creatively solve these problems in ways that policy and other things can't. And so I just want to do that because I think it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So let me go through each one. So healthcare, the reason I love it is because I think So there's a macroeconomic reason, which is obvious, which is trillions of dollars of cost spiraling out of control. It's something that will literally bankrupt the United States and most of the Western world if we don't fix. And what we need to fix is correlating investment to outcomes and creating a cycle where the incentives aren't to, crack your body open and to do a bunch of random procedures, but to do all of the stuff upstream that actually allows you to live a healthy life. And to me, there's a lot of really clever things that software and hardware and products can do to do that. And so I like healthcare because I just think that you can save so many people's lives by doing interesting things. So I'll give you an example. So many people today don't even get a basic blood test.
Right.
Irrelevant where you live, Western world, developing world, third world, it just doesn't matter. But most of the major maladies of the world can be detected and fixed if you just had that. Now, the problem is you probably get a blood test once a year and it costs $1,000 and you go to a lab and you sit there with a bunch of other people and it's impersonal, it's kind of antiseptic and you don't like it. And so we're building this product that basically decomposes this $1 million machine down to a $100 machine that works off of your cell phone camera chip sensor. The same thing that you use to take pictures.
Very cool.
The reason why that's transformational is now you reduce the cost to dollars and individuals can do it in their bathroom or their home. And now all of a sudden you start to change the incentives for people to care about their own body and to understand their own body, and then they're empowered to actually do something. So that's why I like healthcare. Education, I think it's because policy is so fundamentally broken, we are letting down an entire generation. And the problem with that is that it'll create massive instability. So you're already seeing this now. People rioting in places like London a few years ago, Paris a few years ago, Spain a few months ago. When people rioted in the Arab Spring, that wasn't a political pushback. That was a socioeconomic pushback by all these young people who were like, we're frustrated, right? It was this like fruit vendor that immolated himself that started the whole thing.
Right.
And so when you think about that, a third of the world is under the age of 18 now. 1/3 of the population. Billions and billions of kids, young people who have all this potential. So how do you pay that off? By tricking them into forcing them to get into $150,000 worth of debt to go to school, to get a degree that maybe doesn't matter, where they can't get a job afterwards?
No.
Just so you can get reelected? I mean, that's terrible. Those are lies, right? And so I feel like if you can, for example, teach people how to code, which in my opinion is the most fundamentally obvious blue-collar job of the 21st century, it's just a great thing. And you replace, trillions of dollars of cost and debt with hundreds of dollars of opportunity. It's just like an obvious trade-off. And then financial services, I just think there are a lot of people with great ideas. And I think there are a lot of people, when empowered with capital, can do really good things. And I'm really interested in ways where you can redistribute capital. And I think right now capital has been aggregated by a lot of these monolithic institutions that aren't trusted for a whole host of reasons. I think some are valid, probably some are not as valid, but in general what's happened is a very risk-averse culture by people who control the lubricant that's necessary for economies to develop. And so if you can develop these alternative capital flows and marketplaces and systems that create liquidity for individuals, you give them the chance to now build these businesses and do what they think they should do, invest in the things that they believe are worth investing in. And I think, again, in general, individuals are better decision makers than these small groups of people that kind of live in ivory towers.